What is a digital certificate? What is digital certificate or certificate lifecycle management? And how do you assess your certificate management maturity? We're going to get into all of those things today. So let's jump in. Well, hey everyone, this is Ryan Yak with Key Factor. And again, we're going to talk about some really fun stuff today around the topic of certificate management. But first, we got to talk about what is a digital certificate. And it's not something you can touch like this person here. It's a great iStock photo that we use, but you can't really touch the thing. But a digital certificate is a certificate that's backed up by public key infrastructure, and it's a combination of a asymmetric cryptography with a public key and a private key, and that creates a digital certificate to create authentication between things like web servers and things like certificates are on things like Kubernetes deployments and containers. Certificates can use in all different types of places. An example of a digital certificate is something you all can take a look at. If you want to go up to your browser, you can do that today and go ahead and click the little icon at the top there. What you'll notice is that you'll see there's a certificate that was valid for iStock photo, and then you can also click into it and it says, hey, this was actually issued by a certificate authority from Amazon. So that's an example of how these digital certificates are manifested kind of in the real world. They're used to create digital trust between machine identities, which in this case, it's a web server, a website, to talk to one another and authenticate that these connections are secure. So that might be great. You may say, great, Ryan, I've got a bunch of digital certificates that are out there on the public, right? But where else are they actually deployed? Well, digital certificates, when you talk about it, it can be kind of overwhelming because you have all these certificates that are kind of out there that do all different types of things. It can be used for email. It can be used on in a DevOps CI/CD tool environment, whether you're using like Istio Service Mesh or you're using HashiCorp Vault for secrets management. They can be put on IoT devices like cars or wearables or even robots and all kinds of stuff, right? That can be used as code sign certificates to validate that the code signing that you're actually submitting proper code in your organization today. And obviously cloud is a big one. So all these certificates that are kind of out there, they get to be very, very, very complex to actually manage. So what is certificate management? Well, let's give a good definition of this in a minute, but let's talk about why certificate management is a priority for people. This was from the Technology Insight for X501 Certificate Management. It's from Gartner. It was launched in November 2020. They refresh it every year. And this is what they predict. By 2022, organizations that leverage X509 certificate management tools will suffer 90% fewer certificate-related issues and spend half the time managing the issues compared to people that are using spread-based management today. So it's very important to understand kind of how this impacts your organization. If you do not have something that's set up that's around certificate management practices, Gartner's basically saying that you're not going to do well come 2022 if you don't have this in place, because we know these certificates are going to be created more and more and more as you add more and more machine identities in your organization today. So, but what is certificate management? So we talked about why it's important, but what is it? This is a quick definition. There's a lot of definitions out there, but at its basis, it says it's a systematic management of digital certificates, i.e. X509, SSL, TLS, to proactively prevent certificate outages and costly downtime. There's also a bunch of other wheel graphs that you'll see out there too around, hey, how do we do this really cool, awesome way in showing what's a life cycle of certificate management. At Key Factor, we have a pretty simple four-prong approach to it. The first one is visibility. You need to make sure you can find every single certificate that's out there. Key Factor and a lot of other organizations, we don't view that there's second-class certificates out there. Every certificate matters. Making sure you can get all the certificates that are out there, both public and internal, is key to understanding the inventory that you have with your certificates. The next one is bringing them then under control and under compliance. So making sure they have correct algorithms, making sure they have correct policy in place that makes you control all these together. Maybe you start to set up alerts and you start to set up dashboard reporting around when these certificates may expire and where they live and how to actually remediate any issue that could occur if you have an outage. The next one is automation. If you get everything together, you know where they are, you've got a pretty good control around them. You want to start automating the renewal of these certificates so you don't have a certificate related outage in the future. And then the last one is orchestration. So you can automate a lot of this stuff. You can automate the renewals, you can automate the provisioning of things in other places. But the other area is orchestrating certificates with other areas of your business and also other tools. So this means hooking into DevOps, your DevOps pipeline, being able to hook into onboard CAs that are out there and not just your internal CA or any public CA. Being able to connect into those tools, ensure policy there, and that's backed up by enterprise PKI is crucial to the whole life cycle of certificate management. Okay, so we talked about, great, what is a certificate? What's certificate management? Why is it important? What are some of the challenges? So some of the challenges for digital certificates really go back to the way PKI is deployed today and the ways that you can interact with different certificate authorities that are out there. So if we're talking about the built-in issuers that are out there, you have things like Ansible and Istio and HashiCorp and Kubernetes. All these things have these onboard issuing CAs. You also have cloud-based CAs like EJBCA, you've got AWS, you've got Google CAS, which is a new one that just came out. You've got free certificate authorities that are out there like Let's Encrypt. And you've got the internal or private certificate authorities like EJBCA, Microsoft, and others. So if you add all these up, you kind of see that there's just a huge area of responsibility that teams actually have in their organizations today. This kind of shows you all the different areas where people were selecting that said, yes, we use all these different things in the organizations that they have. So all this gets to, you've got a lot of different ways to deploy your PKI, a lot of different CAs to interact with. And there's really three things that tell us and that indicate that you're not really in control of your certificate lifecycle management practices. And these go back to kind of that life cycle that we had talked about earlier around what does it take to actually get a full lifecycle management of these certificates under control. The first one is you have this limited visibility. So based off our data we collect from surveys and conversations we have with customers today, 53% say they don't know how many keys or certificates they actually have, including self-signed certificates. So they have this limited visibility and that's unknown of these certificates they have, but also they don't know the viability of those certs either. So they don't know if they're weak or expired cryptos in place coming up. All that leads to not knowing or not having a good handle on the visibility in your organization. The next one is these manual processes. So we know that on average, there's about 4.9 audits experienced by organizations in the last 24 months. These could be internal related audits that they have in organizations today, but we also know that cert outages are also on the rise. So you have this time-consuming, error-prone process that leads to failed audits and also more and more outages because you don't have proper automation or orchestration in place. And then the last one really gets to the people problem, which is this lack of expertise. 55% say that they don't have sufficient IT and security dedicated to PKI management. And all this kind of leads way to this feeling that you're unable to move fast and adapt to all the certificate related issues that you may have. So what we want to do is bring this kind of all in, is now talk about how can you assess the level of certificate management maturity in your organization today. So if you're at 0 to 5, it doesn't matter. We're going to walk through all of these and give you some quick ideas on how you can assess your maturity and take action on it. I've got these stair steps of these people, and each one obviously represents different levels. But if you look out on an X and Y axis, what you're really looking at is the risk exposure is higher on the left, and the automation level is going to be lower on the right. So, for example, the more you go, the further down the stair step, you have a high risk of exposure to certificate-related outages or audits, failures, all things like that. And the higher you go up on the chart, you have a lower risk exposure because what you're doing is you're having increased levels of automation. So Lower levels of automation lead to higher levels of risk exposure. Higher levels of automation lead to lower levels of risk exposure. So each of these stages, what we're going to go through is talk through what are the characteristics of these stages and what are the questions you can ask yourself to figure out how do you get out of each of these steps and into the next one. So first one is the level one, we call it as manual. And at this level, really what you're doing is you're managing high risk with manual processes. Some of these characteristics, Gartner had mentioned and talked about, you want to make sure you're not doing this, right? But you have lots of spreadsheets, you're time-consuming, error-prone processes, and you're at a high risk of outages because you're doing all of these things manually. So what are some of the questions you can ask to figure out if you're in this step? So the first one is, do I even know how many certificates are in use? Do we even know how many CAs or issuing certificates are in an environment? You'd be surprised at how many organizations don't even know about the different certificate authorities that people are even using that are out of security and out of band in their security practices. And how much time is spent issuing and updating their certificates across all these departments. You can see that there's a lot of time spent when it comes to renewing and updating and making sure these things are in compliance. Add all that up and figure out how much time that's spending. You're going to start to question where you're at, and you're probably at this manual level one, which is at level one. The next one is level two is a siloed approach. So you're limiting your risk through your CA tools that you have, but you're basically doing the bare minimum. So if you have a public certificate authority out there like DigiCert or Entrust or GoDaddy or whatever, you may be able to pull in and have some reporting around these public certificates that are out there. But then you also have a bunch of other certificate authorities that are out there too that's not being brought into one area. So you have some of the tooling in place, you're doing the bare minimum, but you basically have a siloed approach to visibility and reporting. You have all these different silos where you're getting your data from, and you can't actually evaluate the risk that you have because you're so siloed. The other one is that you have zero to minimal automation. You're not really doing a whole lot of automation with renewals that are in place. So some of the questions you can ask, right? Which is, how many reports does it take us to create a holistic view across multiple CAs? All those silos that we have, we got to pull together all these reports, pull together all this alerting from all these different tools. How do we make sure that we can pull this up into one view? That could be a lot of time for you. And if you're figuring out, if you're saying, oh, I can't see it in one view, we got to pull all these different areas, that could be a telling tell you're at level two. How many CAs do we have, and how do we consolidate the certificate inventory? So first level one, you're trying to figure out how many CAs you had. You didn't even know what you had, but now you're trying to figure out how can we consolidate some of this inventory into one place. Another question is, if a certificate is near expiration, how do we make sure that the owner can renew it on time? Are we setting up alerts in place and for automated renewals? If we're not doing that, that's a problem. And then how do we notify application owners if certificates are also near expiration? So making sure that you're also talking to people who are outside your organization today that may be using or interacting with an application that maybe has a cert on it, they even know about it, and be able to update them. That could be a problem telling. If you can't do that today, you may be at level two. Okay, move on to level three. Now you're kind of in a reactive mode. So this is starting to look better. Okay, so you're out of level one, you're out of level two, you're getting into this. You got this full oversight, you got a single pane of glass, you got the central visibility and control, a lot of different advanced reporting, expiration alerts. Those are all kind of coming together into one particular area, one console that you can view everything from. Questions to ask at level three, right? Can we access reports in minutes? How can we get them immediately? Which applications are most affected by outages caused by expired certificates? So being able to have risk profiles attached to certain areas of your business, are you able to do that? How much time do application owners and PKI admins spend on requesting, issuing, provisioning certificates? If that's going down, going lower, maybe you're getting more and more into automation. And how quickly can we identify and remediate certificate cause outages? So if you have that alerting set up and you can get to it right away, this is a probably good tell that you're probably at level three and you're able to fix things, but you're able to fix them only in a reactive mode and not in the next stage, which is more in this preventative mode. All right, now we're getting into level four, and what you're able to do is basically get into an enabling of self-service and automation across your organization to get certificates at a really fast fast turnaround time. You're doing automated workflows with ITSM solutions like ServiceNow. You have very simplified certificate service requests, CSRs that are in place, and you're getting to this certificate lifecycle automation that you have that you were really wanting to. You're able to renew certificates automatically. You're able to understand the full lifecycle of that automation, that automated certificate, and you're able to proactively prevent any type of outage that you have. So some of the questions you can ask to see is how much time does it take to process a CSR? If it's extremely low, then you're probably at this level 4. You have some automated processes and workflows that are in place. After a certificate alert is received, where can we add more automation to resolve this? So getting into how can we proactively look into, do we need to set up an automated renewal for this particular certificate? Maybe not. Let's get into that. And the last one is, can certificate owners bypass manually importing certificates into their application? This is where we're talking about the automated inventory approach, where we're constantly pulling and making sure that you're always have a continuously up-to-date inventory of all your certificates. So level 4 is really at a good spot. You're very proactive. You've got your lifecycle automation kind of in place. Level 5 gets more into the dynamic state, where you're getting into kind of the epitome, unicorn status of managing these certificates. So things that represent this: you are basically zero-touch automation, and you're achieving a state of crypto agility. And what do we mean by that? Well, one is you've looked into deploying a cloud-first PKI strategy. And why is this important? Well, all the things we had talked about before, you can do all those things through an on-prem environment and also connect into cloud systems if you want, right? Through certain protocols and things like that. But probably you're not really doing a ton of that on the latter. You're probably only really focusing on your on-prem internal certificates, and you're really doing a really good job there. But again, we talked about earlier, all these different areas of the business, whether you're integrating or talking to a publicly accessible environment in your organization today, it really does require a cloud-first PKI strategy. So whether you're doing your PKI in the cloud with using certificate authorities that are in the cloud and a managed PKI behind it, that's a big thing that you want to look at, so you can go faster and faster, but also staying compliant with your certificate lifecycle management practices you're using today. The next one is supporting the multiple CAs and applications and devices. So that gets to my earlier point. Without a cloud-first PKI strategy, it's very hard to do this because all these different devices are in different environments, whether it's cloud or on-prem or even a hybrid environment. You're aligned with DevOps priorities and certificate outage practices. So you're an advocate, and you are a partner with the DevSecOps team, and you're instilling your PKI certificate management practices for the DevOps team. It's not going to slow them down, but you have automated integrations or integrations into the orchestration tools they actually have, so that they can get certs out fast, but it's also within band of your security. And the last one is the automation of PKI insert related processes. So now you're able to automatically renewal certificates at a high speed. You're able to automatically change different algorithms that are backing by that certificate if you need to for crypto agility. All these things kind of play into you've mastered that automation around PKI related processes. So to pull all this out, really only in a manual to dynamic state, where you really want to understand these at is manual. You're really at the spreadshirt manual process. It's very time consuming. Siloed, you're getting a little bit better. You've got this fragmented approach though. You can't get consolidated reporting. You don't have a whole lot of automation. Reactive is you're getting that central visibility and control. You have this reporting to be able to act on things, but you can't really get into automation. Proactive, you're getting into this automation approach. You're able to automate renewals of certificates. You have simplified CSRs. You're automating into workflows. And then the last one is you're getting into the orchestration part, where you're integrating the cloud-first PKI strategy, and you're getting into the CA-agnostic technology approach, where any CA that you're using to secure your machine identities, you can integrate to that and manage the lifecycle of that all the way through. So hopefully you like this. This was a quick crash course on what is a cert, what's certificate management, and then ideally is how can you benchmark yourself against where you should be versus where you are at today. So thanks again, and we'll see you soon. Head on to keyfactor.com to learn more about certificate lifecycle automation and how that can help out your organization today.